You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not missing some secret productivity gene that successful people have and you don't. What you're missing is something far more specific, and once you understand what it is, everything changes. Right now, in this exact moment, there are two versions of you existing simultaneously. There's the version sitting here watching this video, the one who's tried every productivity app, every morning routine, every life hack that promised to finally make you the person you know you're capable of becoming. And then there's the other version, the one who exists only in your mind. The one who wakes up at 5 a.m. without an alarm, who works with laser focus for hours, who finishes projects weeks before deadlines, who makes other people wonder how the hell you get so much done. That second version feels so real sometimes, doesn't it? You can see them clearly. You've imagined their morning routine, their workspace, their daily habits. You've felt what it would be like to be them. And that's the problem. Because every hour you spend imagining that perfect version of yourself is an hour the real you stays exactly the same. You're not planning your transformation, you're replacing it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between vividly imagining success and actually achieving it. So it gives you the emotional reward right now, which destroys your motivation to do the actual work later. This isn't a character flaw. It's neuroscience. And 400 years ago, a man who couldn't afford to daydream figured out exactly how to weaponize this against itself. Miyamoto Musashi never had the luxury of imagining a better version of himself. In feudal Japan, samurai didn't get second chances. You either performed or you died. There was no gap between the person you were and the person you needed to be, because that gap would get you killed in a duel. So Musashi developed something that modern productivity culture has completely forgotten. He built systems that made action inevitable. Not probable. Not likely. Inevitable. These weren't motivational tricks or willpower hacks. These were structural changes to how he approached every single task, every single day, that made it impossible for his brain to choose daydreaming over doing. And when you understand these 4 systems, when you actually implement them the way Musashi did, something terrifying happens. You stop being the person who tries and starts being the person who simply does. People will ask you how you changed. They'll want your secrets, your apps, your morning routine. And you won't know how to explain it because you didn't change your habits. You changed your operating system. Let me show you exactly what that means. Before we go deeper, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel and hit that like button. But more importantly, I want you to drop a comment telling me this. What's the one project, the one goal, the one thing you've been daydreaming about for months or maybe years that you still haven't started? Just one sentence. I'm going to show you why you haven't started it yet, and more critically, I'm going to show you the exact system Musashi would use to make starting it inevitable. Not tomorrow. Not Monday. Today. Write that comment now, because what I'm about to reveal isn't theory. It's a 4-century-old system for turning daydreamers into executors. Let's begin. The first system Musashi built was something he called the practice of constant micro-commitments, though he never used those words. In 1604, when Musashi was 20 years old, he had already won 12 duels to the death. 12 times he had faced an opponent who was trying to kill him, and 12 times he had survived. But here's what's strange. After each duel, other samurai would celebrate. They would drink, they would tell stories about their victory, they would bask in the glory of surviving combat. Musashi did none of that. Within hours of nearly dying, he was back in the training hall. Not training for hours. Training for minutes. 5 minutes of a specific sword technique. 10 minutes of footwork. 15 minutes of breathing control. And then he would stop. Completely stop. Go do something else. Come back later and do another short session. This seemed insane to other warriors. Everyone knew that mastery required long, grueling training sessions. You had to push through the pain, embrace the suffering, prove your dedication through marathon practices. Musashi understood something they didn't. He understood that the enemy of productivity isn't laziness. It's the gap between intention and action. And that gap grows wider every time you imagine a huge, perfect work session that never happens. When you tell yourself you're going to work on your project for 3 hours today, your brain immediately calculates the cost. 3 hours means missing other things. 3 hours means discomfort, boredom, frustration. 3 hours means failure is possible because that's a long time to maintain focus. So your brain does what it's designed to do. It protects you. It suggests you wait until you have a better 3-hour block. It reminds you of that thing you need to do first. It offers you a daydream instead, because daydreams are free. They cost nothing and feel like progress. Musashi's system destroys this negotiation before it starts. You don't commit to 3 hours. You commit to 3 minutes. Not 3 minutes as a warm-up to a longer session. 3 minutes total. That's the entire commitment. And here's the key. You set a timer. When those 3 minutes end, you stop. Even if you're in flow, even if you want to continue, you stop. Because you're not training yourself to work. You're training your brain to trust you. Every time you say you'll do 3 minutes and you actually do exactly 3 minutes, you're building evidence. Evidence that when you say you'll start, you will start. Evidence that the gap between intention and action no longer exists. And after a week of this, something changes. Your brain stops fighting you. It stops offering negotiations because it has learned that negotiations don't work. You say 3 minutes, you do 3 minutes. The deal is non-negotiable. And once that trust is built, you can expand. 3 minutes becomes 5. 5 becomes 10. But you never, ever commit to more than you can execute with absolute certainty. Because the moment you break that trust, the moment you promise an hour and deliver 30 minutes, your brain learns that your commitments are negotiable again. And the gap returns. Most people hear this and think it sounds too simple, too small. They want the dramatic transformation, the story about working 16 hours straight and finishing the project in one epic session. But that's the daydream talking. That's your brain offering you the emotional reward of imagining success, so you don't have to face the discomfort of actually starting. Musashi knew that battles aren't won with one perfect strike. They're won with 1,000 small, precise movements executed without hesitation. Your productivity works the same way. The person who does 3 minutes every single day without fail will accomplish infinitely more than the person who plans to do 3 hours and does nothing. Because 3 minutes every day becomes 21 minutes a week. That's an hour and a half per month. 18 hours per year. 18 hours of focused work on something you've been daydreaming about but never starting. That's how books get written. That's how businesses get built. That's how transformations happen. Not through heroic effort, but through micro-commitments executed with absolute reliability. So here's your first practical step. Pick the thing you wrote in the comments. The project you've been daydreaming about. Right now, before this video ends, you're going to commit to 3 minutes on it today. Not after you finish watching. Not tomorrow. Today. 3 minutes. Set a timer. Start. Stop when it goes off. No negotiations. No extensions. Build the trust. Kill the gap. Become someone whose intentions and actions are identical. That's the first system. The second system Musashi developed came from something that happened in 1612, during his most famous duel. He was supposed to fight Sasaki Kojiro, considered the greatest swordsman in Japan at the time. Kojiro arrived at the dueling location exactly on time, as protocol demanded. Musashi arrived 3 hours late. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't disrespect. This was strategy. While Kojiro waited on that beach, growing more agitated with each passing minute, Musashi was preparing. But not in the way you think. He wasn't practicing sword techniques. He wasn't meditating. He wasn't pumping himself up. He was on a boat, carving a wooden sword from an oar. And during those 3 hours, he was doing something that modern productivity experts would call pre-commitment, but Musashi understood it at a level that goes far deeper. He was eliminating every possible path except the one he needed to take. When Musashi finally arrived at that beach with his wooden sword, something had already happened. He had spent 3 hours in a state where turning back was impossible. Every stroke of carving that oar into a sword was a micro-commitment to the duel. Every minute he delayed was burning bridges behind him. By the time he stepped onto that beach, his options had been reduced to one. Fight with absolute totality or die. There was no middle ground left. This is the system of burned bridges, and it's the most uncomfortable thing I'm going to tell you today. Because modern productivity culture wants you to believe in flexibility, in keeping your options open, in being kind to yourself. And all of that sounds nice until you realize it's the exact reason you're still daydreaming instead of doing. Every option you keep open is a door your brain can escape through when the work gets hard. Every backup plan is permission to quit the main plan. Every safety net is a signal to your subconscious that falling is acceptable. Musashi eliminated all of that. And you can too. Here's how this works in practice. When you decide to work on your project, you don't just set a timer for 3 minutes. You eliminate every other possibility first. You close every browser tab except the one you need. You put your phone in another room. You tell someone what you're about to do so there's social accountability. You create a tiny, temporary situation where doing anything other than your 3 minutes of work would require more effort than just doing the work. This sounds extreme until you realize what's actually happening. You're not fighting your procrastination. You're making procrastination harder than productivity. Your brain always chooses the path of least resistance. So you're redesigning the landscape so that the path of least resistance leads directly to your goal. I watched this principle transform someone's life 2 years ago. He was a writer who had been working on a novel for 6 years. 6 years of daydreaming about being a published author. 6 years of opening his laptop with good intentions and closing it an hour later with nothing written. He tried everything. Accountability partners, writing apps, coffee shop work sessions, morning pages. Nothing stuck. Then he implemented Musashi's burned bridges system. Every morning, he would go to a specific coffee shop with no Wi-Fi. He would leave his phone at home. He would order a coffee and sit at a table in the back corner. And here's the crucial part. He would tell the barista he was going to write for exactly 10 minutes, and he would ask her to check on him when the time was up. This created a structure where every escape route was blocked. No Wi-Fi meant no browsing. No phone meant no texting. Telling the barista meant social accountability. Sitting in the back meant everyone behind him could see his screen. And 10 minutes meant the commitment was so small that his brain couldn't justify the social awkwardness of leaving early. What happened? The first day, he wrote 90 words in 10 minutes. The second day, he wrote 80. By day 7, something shifted. His brain stopped looking for exits because it had learned there were none. And when the barista came to tell him his 10 minutes were up, he asked for 10 more. Not because he was motivated. Because continuing was now easier than stopping. 6 months later, his novel was finished. Not because he found willpower. Because he removed every path except the one that led to his goal. That's the second system. Burn the bridges. Make action easier than avoidance. Turn your environment into a channel that flows in only one direction. And right here, I need to pause and ask you something. Because I can see thousands of people watching this video right now, but I don't know your story. I don't know which part of what I just said hit you the hardest. Was it the part about daydreaming replacing action? Was it the realization that you've been keeping too many options open? Or was it something else? Maybe you've tried every productivity system and nothing worked. Maybe you're exhausted from starting over every Monday. Maybe you're scared that even this won't be enough. I want you to go to the comments right now and type this exact phrase. My biggest productivity obstacle is, and then finish that sentence honestly. It could be, my biggest productivity obstacle is I can't focus for more than 5 minutes. Or, my biggest productivity obstacle is I don't know where to start. Or, my biggest productivity obstacle is I keep waiting for perfect conditions. Whatever it is, write it down. Because when you do, 2 things happen. First, you'll see hundreds of other people who wrote the exact same thing. And you'll realize this isn't personal failure. This is human nature. And that changes everything. Second, your comment will help someone else who's suffering in silence. They'll scroll through and see your words and realize they're not alone. That's powerful. So do it now. Go to the comments, type my biggest productivity obstacle is, finish the sentence, and hit post. I read every single comment, and I'm going to address the most common obstacles in future videos. Your struggle could become someone else's breakthrough. Do it now. The third system Musashi built is the one that made him truly dangerous. It's called the principle of negative space, and it's going to make you uncomfortable because it requires doing something that feels completely wrong. In 1614, Musashi was asked to teach a young samurai who was struggling with his sword technique. The student was talented, dedicated, trained for hours every day. But in sparring, he always lost. Other teachers had tried to help him by giving him more techniques, more drills, more information. Musashi watched the student for 5 minutes and said nothing. Then he told the student to stop training for a week. Completely stop. No practice, no drills, no thinking about sword fighting. Just stop. The student was confused and insulted. How could stopping make him better? But Musashi insisted. And during that week of forced emptiness, something happened. The student's mind stopped drowning in techniques. All the accumulated information settled. And when he returned to training, he could suddenly see the openings in his opponent's defense that had always been there. He wasn't better because he learned more. He was better because he removed the noise that was blocking his perception. This is the system that nobody talks about because it contradicts everything modern productivity culture teaches you. You've been told that productivity means constant action, maximum output, optimizing every minute. So you fill your day with tasks, your mind with inputs, your schedule with commitments. And then you wonder why you can't focus, why you feel scattered, why nothing feels like it's actually moving forward. Musashi understood that productivity isn't about addition. It's about subtraction. It's about identifying everything in your life that feels like productivity but is actually just noise, and eliminating it ruthlessly. Here's what this looks like in practice. Take your project list right now. Not your task list, your project list. All the things you're supposedly working on. For most people, that's somewhere between 8 and 20 different projects. Book you want to write, business you want to start, skill you want to learn, relationship you want to improve, habit you want to build. 8 to 20 different directions, and you're making microscopic progress in all of them, which means you're making no meaningful progress in any of them. Musashi's system says you get one. Not one per category. One total. One project that gets your focused attention until it's complete or until you consciously decide it's not worth completing. Everything else goes into a file called someday maybe. Not abandoned, not forgotten, just deliberately not now. The resistance you're feeling right now as you read this, that voice saying, but all of these projects are important, that's your brain trying to keep its options open. That's the daydreaming mechanism protecting itself. Because as long as you're working on 8 projects, you can tell yourself you're productive. You can point to small amounts of progress in multiple areas. But you know what you can't do? You can't point to anything finished. Anything transformed. Anything that moved from imagination into reality. That requires the kind of focus that only comes from negative space. From deliberately creating emptiness in your life so that what remains can grow without competition. I know someone who applied this principle to his business. He was running 6 different revenue streams, and all of them were barely profitable. He spent his days switching between projects, never going deep on anything, always feeling busy but never feeling successful. Then he did something that felt insane. He shut down 5 of the 6 revenue streams. Just stopped them. All the sunk cost, all the potential, all the maybe this will work out gone. And he took the one remaining stream and gave it everything. 3 months later, that one stream was generating more revenue than all 6 combined had been generating before. Not because he worked harder. Because he removed the competition for his own attention. That's the third system. Subtraction before addition. That's the third system. Subtraction before addition. One project, total commitment, everything else deliberately set aside. Create negative space. Let your focus become absolute. Stop trying to do everything and become dangerous at one thing. The fourth system is the one that ties everything together, and it's the reason Musashi won 60 duels without ever losing. It's called the practice of the next obvious move, and it's so simple that most people completely miss it. In 1643, a student asked Musashi how he stayed calm during duels when one mistake meant death. Musashi's answer was only 3 words. I see moves. Not outcomes, Not consequences, not what-if scenarios. Just moves. The next obvious physical action his body needed to take. Block. Thep. Strike. That's it. No daydreaming about victory. No catastrophizing about defeat. Just an endless chain of next obvious moves, executed one at a time with total presence. This is the final system, and it's the one that makes all the others possible. Because here's the truth about why you're stuck daydreaming instead of doing. You're not focused on the next obvious move. You're focused on the final outcome. You imagine the finished book, the successful business, the transformed body. And because that outcome is so far away, so big, so uncertain, your brain freezes. It doesn't know how to get from here to there. So it offers you a daydream instead, because in the daydream, you can skip all the uncomfortable middle parts and go straight to the reward. Musashi's system destroys this by making it impossible to focus on outcomes. You train yourself to see only the next obvious move, not the next 10 moves, not the strategy for the whole project, just the single, specific physical action that comes next. Here's how this works with your project. You're not trying to write a book. You're opening a document. That's the next obvious move. Once the document is open, you're not trying to write a chapter. You're typing one sentence. That's the next obvious move. Once the sentence is written, you're not trying to finish a page. You're typing the next sentence. Next obvious move. This sounds mechanical because it is mechanical. And that's exactly why it works. Your brain can't negotiate with a next obvious move. It can't catastrophize about it. It can't daydream about it. It's too simple, too immediate, too obvious. There's nothing to debate. The document is closed. The next obvious move is to open it. You either do it or you don't. And when you train yourself to see your entire life as a chain of next obvious moves, something happens that other people find disturbing. You become mechanical in the best possible way. You don't wait for motivation. You don't check if you're in the mood. You don't waste energy on internal debates. You just execute the next obvious move, and then the next one, and then the next one. And when someone asks you how you get so much done, you won't know how to explain it. Because from your perspective, you're not doing anything impressive. You're just doing the next obvious move. But from the outside, you're moving through life like a machine that never stops, never hesitates, never negotiates. You've become what Musashi became. Someone for whom action and intention are the same thing. Here's how you implement this today. Take your project, the one you commented about earlier, and write down only the next obvious move. Not a plan. Not a strategy. Just the single physical action that would move you one tiny step forward. For a writer, it might be open laptop. For an entrepreneur, it might be send one email. For someone learning a skill, it might be watch first 2 minutes of tutorial. Write that down. And then do only that. Don't do more. Don't extend it. Don't turn it into a session. Just do that one next obvious move, and stop. You're not trying to make progress. You're training your brain to execute next obvious moves without hesitation. Do this for a week. One next obvious move per day. No more. After a week, you'll notice something. Seeing the next obvious move and doing the next obvious move start to happen simultaneously. There's no gap. No negotiation. No internal debate. You see it, you do it, you move to the next one. That's when everything changes. That's when you stop being someone who tries and become someone who does. That's when daydreaming dies and execution becomes your default state. 4 systems. Micro-commitments that build trust between your intentions and actions. Burned bridges that eliminate every path except the one you need. Negative space that removes competition for your attention. Next obvious moves that make hesitation impossible. This isn't motivation. This isn't willpower. This is structural transformation. You're not changing what you do. You're changing who you are. And the person who emerges from implementing these systems doesn't recognize the person who started. The daydreamer dies. The executor is born. And when people look at you 6 months from now, when they see you finishing projects while they're still planning, when they ask you how you changed, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that you didn't wait for perfect conditions. You didn't wait for inspiration. You didn't wait to feel ready. You just started executing next obvious moves. And those moves compounded into someone unrecognizable. Someone who scares people a little bit because your level of execution doesn't look normal. It looks obsessive, unbalanced, unhealthy. And you'll smile when you hear that because you know what they're really saying. They're saying they recognize what you've become. And it terrifies them because it shows them what they could become if they stopped daydreaming and started doing. So let me ask you the question that matters. 6 months from now, when someone asks you about the project you've been daydreaming about, what are you going to tell them? Are you going to tell them you're still thinking about it, still planning, still waiting for the right time? Or are you going to show them what you built? That choice happens right now, not tomorrow. Before this video ends, you're going to do your first 3-minute commitment. You're going to eliminate one escape route. You're going to identify the one project that deserves your focus. And you're going to execute your next obvious move. 3 minutes. No negotiations. No extensions. Just proof that the gap between your intention and action no longer exists. That's how transformation starts. Not with inspiration. With execution. Do it now. If you made it this far, then you're not here by accident. You're here because you're done with daydreaming. Done with versions of yourself that only exist in your imagination. You're ready to become someone who executes. Someone who finishes. Someone who transforms imagination into reality. So subscribe to this channel right now and turn on that notification bell. Because every video I release is designed to give you one more system, one more principle, one more tool that moves you from trying to doing. This isn't a motivation channel. This is a transformation channel. And everyone who's here is walking the same path. From daydreamer to executor. From imagining to building. From someday to today. We're building something together. A community of people who understand that change doesn't happen when you feel ready. It happens when you start executing next obvious moves regardless of how you feel. Subscribe now. And then go to the comments one more time and tell me this. What's your next obvious move? Not your plan. Not your goal. Just the single physical action you're doing next. Write it down. Make it public. Make it real. And then go do it. I'll see you in the next video. Now go execute.